All right, so get ready to dive into some seriously cool music history, because
Mhm.
today we are cracking open the crypt, hanging out with the Cramps.
Oh, yeah.
You've given us some killer articles and even a documentary to get us started.
Right.
So we're gonna unearth all the good stuff, where their sound came from, how Lux and Ivy turned their love for digging through dusty record crates into a band,
Yeah.
and why the Cramps still matter today.
Well, and what's wild is, most people, when they think the Cramps, they think, like,
Yeah.
spooky, wild, maybe a little scary, which, don't get me wrong, it's all true.
Yeah.
But at their core, they were absolute purists. I mean, obsessed with this raw, almost forgotten form of rock and roll.
It's true. Under all that leather and those crazy hairstyles, they were like musical archaeologists.
Totally.
But before we dig into the songs themselves, I think we got to set the scene for us. What exactly is psychobilly?
Yeah.
And where does it fit in with everything else happening in music at the time?
Okay, so picture this, right? It's the late 70s. Disco is dominating the airwaves, but there's this whole other scene brewing, punk rock.
Right.
And within that scene, you get bands like the Cramps, who were taking that raw energy of punk and kind of splicing it with this spirit of early rock and roll and rockabilly. Think Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, but with a seriously dangerous edge.
Mm-hmm.
And they called that sound psychobilly because it's like rockabilly got mixed up with a horror movie soundtrack.
Yeah.
Spooky, high energy, and a little bit dangerous.
Okay. That makes total sense. Like, they weren't just copying a sound, they were mixing it up with all these other influences, right?
Yeah.
The articles you sent mentioned blues.
Totally.
Even boogie woogie as well.
Absolutely. And you can really hear it in their music.
Yeah.
Like, listen to the piano on Human Fly.
Yeah.
That's pure Jerry Lee Lewis, that frantic energy.
Yeah.
But then Ivy comes in with this distorted guitar riff, and it's pure punk rock.
Uh-huh.
That's the Cramps in a nutshell, blending these seemingly disparate influences into something totally new.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where Poison Ivy's guitar style comes in.
Yeah.
These articles and that interview with Guitar World you sent really highlight how unique her playing was.
She's a true original.
Yeah.
It wasn't just straight rockabilly,
Yeah.
You hear surf rock in there, even a touch of Link Wray's Menace.
Right.
She created this sonic landscape that was both totally retro and totally new.
And to think they developed that sound playing these tiny, sweaty clubs in New York City.
I know, right?
We all know CBGB's was the birthplace of punk, but the Cramps, they were different.
Yeah, they really were.
They weren't afraid to throw some rockabilly, some surf rock, even a little bit horror movie soundtrack into the mix.
And people responded to it.
Right.
The articles mention how the Cramps shared stages with bands like Suicide and Blondie.
Wow.
Talk about a who's who of the New York underground scene.
It's wild to imagine those early shows.
Oh, I know.
Did people get it right away? Or were there some raised eyebrows when Lux and Ivy hit the stage in their full Cramps regalia?
It's so funny because, it's easy to forget now, but, back then,
Yeah.
a band singing about B-movies
Yeah.
and wearing those outfits,
Yeah.
it was like they came from another planet.
Totally.
Some people, they got it right away.
Mm-hmm.
Others, not so much.
Yeah.
I mean, there's stories about them getting heckled, told to get real jobs.
I can only imagine.
But that's what's so cool about their story.
Yeah.
Here's this band deeply in love with a bygone era of music, playing it their own way
Right. Yeah.
in front of a punk rock audience.
Yeah.
And they were fearless.
Yeah.
They didn't care about fitting in, following trends, which, in a way, that's the most punk rock thing you can do.
Totally. And that brings us to their relationship. They weren't just bandmates. They
Yeah.
were partners in crime,
Yeah.
musical soulmates, right?
Absolutely. Lux and Ivy found each other in the chaos of the 70s New York scene, and it was like kismet,
Yeah.
All the articles mention how they met at art school and bonded over this shared love for obscure records, for outsider art, this whole world that existed beneath the surface of what was considered, cool at the time,
It's like their meeting was like rock and roll destiny,
It really was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about the music either, Ivy was instrumental in shaping their entire aesthetic.
Right.
Think about those iconic Cramps show posters.
Oh, yeah.
She designed those.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Talk about a creative power couple.
Right.
Ivy was managing the band, creating their look, playing these killer guitar lines, all while Lux was, well, being Lux.
Yeah, yeah.
It makes our his and hers bathrobe set seem a little less impressive.
Just a tad.
Just a tad,
Just a tad.
But their story isn't just about New York.
Right.
They ended up recording in Memphis.
They did, yeah.
Which for a band so in love with early rock and roll seems almost like a pilgrimage, right?
Absolutely. And not just any studio,
Right.
They recorded at Ardent Studios, the same place where legends like Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis laid down some of their most iconic tracks.
Wow.
It was a match made in rock and roll heaven.
Totally. And they had Alex Chilton from Big Star producing some of those early sessions.
Yeah, and those tracks, they'd become the basis for their debut EP, Gravest Hits, in 1979, which, let's be honest, is a perfect title for the Cramps.
It really is.
It really is.
And those early singles, Human Fly, The Way I Walk,
So good.
they were like calling cards, like announcing to the world that the Cramps had arrived and they were here to stay.
And they were just getting started.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those early singles were like a really great preview of what was to come. Because, let's be real, to truly understand, the Cramps, you got to talk about their debut album, Songs the Lord Taught Us.
It's true. Songs the Lord Taught Us. It wasn't just an album. It was like a declaration of their mission statement as a band.
Absolutely.
Right.
Remember how we were talking about them being like musical archaeologists?
Yeah.
This album is where that really comes to life.
Right.
Like they dig up these obscure rockabilly and garage rock songs, stuff most people had never even heard of, and they find a way to make them totally their own.
Yeah, and it's not just that they covered these songs, it's that they crampified them.
Exactly.
Like,
they infuse them with this raw energy, this dark humor, this undeniable Cramps swagger.
Right.
Think about hearing Goo Goo Muck for the first time.
Right.
Like it makes you want to find out who wrote the original.
Right, totally. It's like they opened up this whole world of forgotten music.
They were like this gateway drug to all this cool, raw, unadulterated rock and roll.
And they weren't just reviving old sounds. They were saying something new with them because it's easy to, to get distracted by the wild outfits and the stage antics, but the lyrics, there's a lot going on there.
Oh, you're right. There's a surprising amount of depth and wordplay, beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Take Can Your Pussy Do the Dog?
Right.
A song that's deliberately provocative.
Right.
Even shocking on the surface, but if you listen closer, you find this really like biting commentary on societal expectations and conformity.
It's like they're using like humor and shock value to sneak in these sly critiques of the status quo.
Exactly. They were always like playing with those boundaries.
Right.
Making you think while you were dancing.
And speaking of dancing,
yeah,
their music really resonated with audiences in Europe, didn't it?
It did. Yeah.
There's a reason why those old concert posters and photos from their shows in France are so legendary.
Absolutely. Like their sound just exploded in Europe.
Yeah.
Especially in France. They were treated like rock royalty, which given their DIY like punk rock ethos.
Right.
It's kind of ironic, don't you think?
Totally. It makes you wonder if those early critics who dismissed them as a joke ever saw those photos of French fans going crazy at their shows.
Right. You can't deny the energy, the passion, the sheer joy that radiates from those images.
And a lot of that energy came from Ivy's guitar playing.
Oh, yeah.
That the Guitar World interview you said.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about how she saw herself as a hoodlum musician, like just going for it,
And she wasn't afraid to experiment with sounds to create this wall of noise that perfectly complemented Lux's vocals.
And let's be real, her riffs were insanely catchy.
Oh, totally.
I mean, once you hear that opening lick to Goo Goo Muck, it's stuck in your head for days.
Absolutely. And her playing was so influential too.
Yeah.
You can hear like echoes of her style in bands like the White Stripes, Queens of the Stone Age.
It's amazing to think that a band so in love with a seemingly niche genre like psychobilly could have such a lasting impact on music.
It's a testament to their originality, their authenticity.
Right.
And their like unwavering commitment to their vision.
Yeah, and speaking of vision, Ivy wasn't just the guitarist, she was she was the band's manager.
Right.
She designed their album covers.
Yeah.
She was involved in like every aspect of their career.
Talk about a triple threat. She's like the Tina Turner of psychobilly.
That's a perfect way to put it.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what makes their story so compelling,
Yeah.
This incredible partnership, this shared love of music, art, and pushing boundaries.
They really were a team through and through.
They really were.
And even though Lux is gone now, the Cramps music, it continues to find new audiences, inspire new bands. There's something about their sound, that raw, untamed energy that just never gets old.
It's timeless, really.
Yeah.
But what do you think it is about the Cramps?
Yeah.
That still resonates with people today after all these years,
It's interesting, right? Because like on the surface, you have this band that's like obsessed with B movies, and they're wearing these wild outfits, and they're singing about things that would make your grandma blush.
Right.
But beneath all that, there's this like incredible sincerity.
Yeah.
This pure, like unadulterated love for the music that inspired them.
Absolutely. And I think that comes through in their music,
Absolutely.
Like they weren't afraid to be themselves, to fully embrace their own like unique vision.
Yeah.
Even if it meant, being misunderstood or ridiculed.
And there's something like really inspiring about that, don't you think?
Oh, totally.
In a world where it's like so easy to get caught up in trends, in trying to please everybody.
Yeah.
The Cramps were just like, this is who we are, take it or leave it.
And people took it. They connected with their music because it felt real.
Yeah.
It felt dangerous. It felt like different from everything else that was happening at the time.
It's like a Poison Ivy said in that interview, we were just using carny terms to drum up business.
Right.
It wasn't meant as a style of music. They were just playing the music they loved, and somehow it resonated with people all over the world.
It's a testament to the power of authenticity.
Totally.
Like the Cramps, they proved that you don't have to fit in to stand out.
Right.
And in fact, sometimes being different is exactly what makes you unforgettable.
So well said. So well said. What do you think, like, listening to all this about the Cramps, like digging into their music and their story, what's the biggest takeaway for you? What's that one thing you want to, like, leave our listener thinking about?
I think for me, it's just that sense of freedom that the Cramps embodied. That feeling of, like, I'm going to do my own thing, I'm going to have fun, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
Right.
Like, they were fearless in their creativity, and that's incredibly inspiring, no matter what you're passionate about in life.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's like, if the Cramps could find success by being so unapologetically themselves,
Totally.
then maybe,
Yeah.
just maybe, there's hope for the rest of us weirdos out there too.
Exactly. Embrace your inner ghoul.
I love that.
Right. Find your people, make the music you want to hear, and never be afraid to let your freak flag fly.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So there you have it, a deep dive into the world of the Cramps. We hope you enjoyed digging through the musical graveyard with us. Now go crank up some Cramps, put on your best leopard print, and stay weird.